There is a habit that millions of people practice every night without realizing they are putting their heart at risk. It is not smoking. It is not drinking. It is not lack of exercise. It is eating late, the heavy meal after 8, 9, 10 at night, when the body has already prepared itself for rest and recovery mode. What happens inside the body at that hour is, in many ways, more dangerous than people imagine. Because it is not just about gaining weight, it is about heart attack, stroke, cardiac arrhythmia, sudden death during sleep. Before the mechanisms, the scale of the problem. A study published in the European Heart Journal in 2023, with more than 103,000 participants followed for several years, showed that people who eat their last meal of the day after 9 p.m. have significantly higher cardiovascular disease risk, 28% higher stroke risk, and 24% higher coronary disease risk compared to those who finish eating before 8 p.m. The study controlled for all known risk factors: smoking, physical activity, BMI, blood pressure. The association survived all those adjustments. The time at which you eat is an independent cardiovascular risk factor. Mechanism number 1, the nocturnal triglyceride peak and the overloaded heart. When you eat a meal rich in fats and carbohydrates at night, the liver releases triglycerides into the bloodstream. That postprandial triglyceride peak is especially dangerous at night because the resting metabolism cannot efficiently process the excess lipids. A study in Circulation showed that the nocturnal postprandial triglyceride peak is 30 to 40% higher than the same peak from the same meal eaten during the day, because circadian clock enzymes that process triglycerides have low activity at night. Elevated triglycerides increase blood viscosity and coagulation tendency. During sleep, when blood flow is slower and blood pressure should be at its lowest, more viscous blood with greater clotting tendency is a recipe for ischemic events. Frank, 67, retired from Cleveland, had the habit of eating dinner at 10 p.m. He woke in the middle of the night with chest pain. Diagnosis: unstable angina precipitated by nocturnal postprandial hyperlipidemia. Changed dinner to 6:30 p.m. and the angina did not return. Mechanism number 2. Blood pressure that does not fall during sleep. In people with healthy sleep patterns, blood pressure drops naturally 10 to 20% during sleep. The dipping pattern. Non-dippers have significantly higher risk of left ventricular hypertrophy, kidney disease, stroke, and heart attack. When the digestive system is active processing a large meal, the sympathetic nervous system is activated, keeping blood pressure elevated. A study in the Journal of Hypertension showed that people who eat within 2 hours before sleep have significantly higher nocturnal blood pressure and are less likely to show the dipping pattern. For those who already have hypertension, extremely common after age 60, that absence of nocturnal dipping can transform controlled hypertension into a serious cardiovascular event. Margaret, 65, retired from Phoenix with controlled hypertension. Dinner at 9:30 p.m. Ambulatory blood pressure monitoring showed she was a non-dipper. After changing dinner to 6 p.m., she became a dipper within weeks. Mechanism number 3. Nocturnal arrhythmia triggered by heavy digestion. When you eat a heavy meal before bedtime, the digestive system demands increased blood flow. To meet this demand, the heart must increase cardiac output, activating the sympathetic system when it should be at rest. This conflict creates autonomic instability, abnormal heart rate variability that is a known arrhythmia risk factor. In people with underlying heart disease, often undiagnosed, this instability can trigger paroxysmal atrial fibrillation or, in severe cases, ventricular fibrillation. A study in Heart Rhythm showed that episodes of paroxysmal atrial fibrillation peak between midnight and 3 a.m. in patients who report eating late. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from. And if not yet subscribed, click the button and turn on the bell. Mechanism number 4. Gastroesophageal reflux that compromises sleep and worsens sleep apnea. Eating late and lying down soon after creates ideal conditions for gastroesophageal reflux. Nocturnal reflux worsens sleep apnea by irritating the airways and promoting upper airway spasms. Sleep apnea is one of the most underestimated cardiovascular risk factors. Each apneic episode is accompanied by oxygen desaturation, sympathetic discharge, blood pressure, and heart rate spikes. People with severe untreated sleep apnea have heart attack and stroke risk multiplied 2 to 3 times. For people over 60 who frequently already have undiagnosed sleep apnea, late dinner may be the factor that transforms mild apnea into severe. Mechanism number 5. Elevated nocturnal blood sugar and silent vascular damage. The circadian clock regulates insulin sensitivity, highest in the morning, lowest at night. The same carbohydrates at 7 a.m. produce a smaller glucose peak than the same amount at 9 p.m. This phenomenon, nocturnal circadian insulin resistance, is especially relevant for people with type 2 diabetes or prediabetes. Prolonged nocturnal hyperglycemia activates inflammatory pathways, increases oxidative damage to vascular endothelium, and promotes atherosclerotic plaque progression. A study in diabetes care showed that nocturnal postprandial hyperglycemia was associated with significant increase in endothelial damage markers in next morning blood samples. Mechanism number 6. Nocturnal cortisol and the cardiovascular stress cycle. Cortisol should reach its lowest point between midnight and 3 a.m. Late eating disrupts this pattern. The metabolic stress of nocturnal digestion activates the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Elevated blood sugar stimulates cortisol secretion. A 2022 Brigham and Women's Hospital study, published in Cell Metabolism, showed that eating late affects circadian rhythms of multiple hormones, including cortisol, amplifying cardiovascular risk. People who eat late have significantly higher nocturnal cortisol, compromising nocturnal cardiovascular recovery. Mechanism number 7. The specific risk for those who have already had a heart attack. Recurrent heart attack frequently occurs when a stable atherosclerotic plaque becomes unstable and ruptures. Factors that destabilize plaques include abrupt blood pressure increase, triglyceride peaks, hyperglycemia, vascular inflammation. Late heavy dinner activates all those factors simultaneously during the nocturnal period, when emergency medical response is slower. A BMJ open study showed that coronary heart disease patients who dine after 9 p.m. have significantly higher second cardiac event risk than those who finish before 7 p.m. Even with optimized medication, the plan to change timing gradually without suffering. Most effective method: advance dinner 30 minutes per week. If you currently eat at 10 p.m., first week 9:30, second week 9, continuing until reaching 6 to 7:30 p.m. The central data, each additional hour of delay in the last meal beyond 8 p.m. was associated with incremental cardiovascular risk increase in the European Heart Journal study with 103,312 participants. Those eating after 9 p.m. had 19% higher risk. The relationship was dose-response. Later dinner, higher risk. Changing dinner time may be one of the cheapest and most accessible cardiovascular health interventions available. The circadian clock is the central mechanism. The heart has its own peripheral clock synchronizing cardiac gene expression, blood pressure, and inflammatory response with the 24-hour cycle. When meal timing is misaligned with natural circadian rhythm, that misalignment affects the heart's peripheral clock, compromising functions that should be protected during sleep. Harvard Medical School researchers published in PNAS studies showing that circadian misalignment, including that caused by late meals, increases cardiovascular risk biomarkers, including blood pressure, resting heart rate, and inflammatory markers. The message is clear: the heart has a schedule. When you eat outside that schedule, you desynchronize the clock that protects the heart during sleep. Eat dinner early, sleep well, wake up alive. God bless you and give you much health. Until next time, the Blue Zones and early dinner. The Blue Zones, the world's regions with the highest concentration of centenarians and lowest cardiovascular disease incidence, share several dietary patterns. One of the most consistent is early, light dinner. In Sardinia, Okinawa, Nicoya, Loma Linda, populations studied by researcher Dan Buettner, dinner is not the main meal of the day and is eaten relatively early. Chrononutrition science is documenting why that pattern has independent cardiovascular benefits: circadian rhythm respect, preserved nocturnal blood pressure drop, lower nocturnal triglyceride peak, less cortisol disruption. It is no coincidence that the cultures with greatest longevity practice early, light dinner. It is a convergence of traditional wisdom and circadian biology. The practical plan. 5 practical changes for this week. First, advance dinner 30 minutes this week, just 30 minutes. Second, make lunch the main meal of the day. Third, if you cannot eat dinner early, drastically reduce dinner size to protein and vegetables, avoiding refined carbohydrates and fatty foods at night. Fourth, establish a minimum 2 hours between dinner and bedtime. Never lie down with the stomach still working on main digestion. Fifth, monitor your body signals. If you wake with heaviness, heartburn, unresolved fatigue, or middle-of-night palpitations, these may be signs that late dinner is affecting your heart. Consult a doctor. The chrononutrition message is not complicated. Eat most of your calories early in the day, keep dinner light and early, and give your heart the hours of recovery it needs. Why medication does not compensate for late dinner? A common misconception among heart patients is that medication resolves the lifestyle problem. Statins, antihypertensives, aspirin. These drugs were designed for conditions of reasonable physiological rest. They assume the patient sleeps in relative metabolic quiet. When the patient lies down with the digestive system activated, triglycerides peaking, blood pressure elevated, cortisol disrupted, the medications operate in a hemodynamic context for which they were not optimized. The BMJ Open study showing higher second heart attack risk in late dining coronary patients was conducted on patients taking optimized cardiac medications. Late dinner exceeds the protective capacity of pharmacotherapy. Do not wait for a heart attack to make this decision. Eat dinner early, sleep well, wake up alive. God bless you and give you much health. Until next time with more science-based tips for living longer and healthier. Why this habit is so hard to change. Late dinner is frequently not laziness or carelessness. It is often the result of a social and work structure that pushes the whole day toward late afternoon and night. Lunch became a quick snack, work extended, traffic consumed hours, and when there is finally time and calm for the main meal, it is 9 or 10 p.m. To change this pattern, the solution is not only to change dinner time, it is to change the structure of the day. Lunch needs to become the main meal again. Dinner needs to become something light and early. That inversion, lunch as the most caloric and nutritious meal of the day, dinner as something light and early, is the pattern that the world's longest-lived populations with the lowest cardiovascular disease incidence practice. It is not a new discovery. It is the ancient wisdom of eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a prince, dinner like a pauper, which modern cardiology has finally proven with robust population studies. For the audience over 60, that change may literally be the difference between waking tomorrow or not. The specific risk for postmenopausal women. Postmenopausal women deserve specific mention because they have a particularly sensitive risk profile for late dinner. The loss of estrogen after menopause alters endothelial function, increases prothrombotic tendency, and elevates cardiovascular risk. At the same time, estrogen had a chronobiological effect. It helped keep circadian rhythms synchronized. Without estrogen, the circadian clock becomes more vulnerable to disruption. Studies show that postmenopausal women eating late have greater nocturnal blood pressure increase, higher non-dipping rate, and greater elevation of nocturnal postprandial inflammatory markers than premenopausal women with the same pattern. For women over 60, late dinner is an amplified cardiovascular risk that deserves specific attention. A summary of all 7 mechanisms connecting late dinner with nocturnal death. Mechanism 1. Nocturnal triglyceride peak. thicker blood more prone to clotting when the heart is at rest. Mechanism 2. Absence of nocturnal blood pressure dipping. The heart does not rest. Mechanism 3. Nocturnal autonomic instability from active digestion, arrhythmias. Mechanism 4. Gastroesophageal reflux worsening sleep apnea, repeated nocturnal hypoxia. Mechanism 5. Prolonged nocturnal hyperglycemia, silent endothelial damage. Mechanism 6. Elevated nocturnal cortisol, inflammation and cardiovascular stress during sleep. Mechanism 7. Atherosclerotic plaque destabilization during the period of greatest vulnerability. None of these mechanisms acts in isolation. Late heavy dinner activates all simultaneously during the period when the heart most needs to recover. The solution is simple. Eat dinner early and light. God bless you and give you much health. Until next time. The cultural challenge of changing dinner time in Western countries. In the United States, the UK, Canada, and Australia, dinner is often the social meal, family gathering, date night, the event of the day. Proposing to eat dinner at 6 p.m. can feel like eliminating an important ritual. The key is not to present it as a restriction, but as an upgrade of the ritual. Family dinner at 6:30 or 7 p.m. instead of 9 can be equally meaningful, equally connected, and also protective of everyone's heart at the table. For adult children of elderly parents, changing dinner timing is one of the most impactful cardiovascular prevention interventions you can make for your parents. Easier to implement than many dietary changes and with robust scientific evidence. For grandchildren living with grandparents, this video may be the conversation that saves a loved one's life. Share it. The economic argument for chrononutrition as public health policy. Cardiovascular disease is the leading cause of death and one of the most expensive disease burdens globally. The evidence that meal timing is an independent, modifiable cardiovascular risk factor suggests that chrononutrition education should be part of cardiovascular risk prevention programs. Unlike many pharmaceutical or surgical interventions, changing meal timing costs nothing. It has no adverse effects. It does not require a prescription. The main barriers are cultural and behavioral, which can be addressed through education. The European Heart Journal evidence, the JACC data, the cell metabolism study from Brigham and Women's Hospital, they all point toward the same conclusion. When you eat matters for your heart. Changing dinner time may be the single most important free cardiovascular intervention available to every person over 60 tonight. Sleep well, wake up alive. God bless you and give you much health. Until next time. Frequently asked questions about late dinner and heart risk. My doctor never mentioned this. Chrononutrition is a relatively new field. Most medical training did not include it. That is changing rapidly as the evidence base grows. Share this information with your doctor and ask specifically about meal timing as part of your cardiovascular risk management. I take heart medication. Does that mean I am protected? No. As described in mechanism number 7, cardiovascular medication does not compensate for the hemodynamic and metabolic effects of late heavy dinner. The BMJ Open study demonstrating higher second heart attack risk was conducted on medicated patients. What if I am hungry at night? This is a biological adaptation that reverses when meal timing changes. When you eat the main meal earlier, hunger naturally shifts to earlier in the day. The first 1 to 2 weeks are the hardest. After that, the body's circadian appetite signals realign with the new schedule. How early is early enough? The European Heart Journal data shows progressive benefit with each hour earlier. The ideal is finishing the last significant meal before 8 p.m. Between 6 and 7:30 p.m. is the range with the best documented cardiovascular outcomes. Even finishing by 8 p.m. rather than 9 or 10 p.m. produces measurable benefit. Do not let perfect be the enemy of better. Start with 30 minutes earlier tonight. God bless you. What to eat when you cannot eat early. Sometimes life makes early dinner impossible. Working shifts, family obligations, social events. For those occasions, the emergency strategy is Eat a very small portion composed primarily of protein and vegetables, completely avoiding refined carbohydrates and fatty foods at night. A small piece of grilled fish with steamed vegetables at 9 p.m. is dramatically less cardiovascularly disruptive than a full dinner of pasta, bread, and dessert at the same time. The carbohydrates and fats are the main drivers of the nocturnal triglyceride peak, blood sugar spike, and autonomic activation. Protein and vegetables at night, in small amounts, cause far less cardiovascular disruption. This is not permission for heavy late eating, with just different food choices. A large portion of any food late at night disrupts the circadian rhythm and activates the digestive sympathetic conflict that drives the mechanisms described. Portion size at night matters as much as food choice. The key takeaway: your heart is most vulnerable during sleep, and what you eat before sleep determines how much protection or threat it faces during those nocturnal hours. The European Heart Journal, the Journal of Hypertension, the Heart Rhythm Journal, Cell Metabolism, the BMJ Open, 5 major cardiovascular and metabolic journals, all pointing in the same direction. The science is settled. Late dinner harms the heart. Change your dinner time. It may be the most important free decision you make for your heart tonight. God bless you and give you much health. Until next time. The 3-word cardiovascular prescription. Eat dinner early. 3 words that the evidence shows can reduce stroke risk by up to 28%, reduce coronary disease risk by 24%, restore nocturnal blood pressure dipping, reduce arrhythmia risk, improve sleep apnea, reduce endothelial damage from hyperglycemia, and lower nocturnal cortisol. No drug does all of that. No supplement does all of that. A change in dinner timing does all of that. Free, with no side effects. Starting tonight. Your heart has been working for you every minute of your life. Give it the hours of recovery it deserves. Eat dinner early. Sleep well. Wake up alive. God bless you. Until next time, with more evidence-based tips for living longer and better with a healthy heart. 103,000 lives in the European Heart Journal study confirmed it. Let yours confirm it too. God bless you and give you much health. The heart deserves better than working overtime during what should be its recovery hours. Give it that gift, the gift of early dinner and true nocturnal rest, tonight. God bless you.